Welcome to the Gifts of God Sunday Talk. So glad to have you with us. And it's my delight every week to be with you and share whatever we're supposed to share. And it's been a wonderful week for us. We've been home now for a little more than a week, and we're kind of getting our land legs and rebooting ourselves. This last tour was over 2 months, and I think we overdid it a little bit. And we were pretty discombobulated when we got back, and we kind of limped home. And then when we got home, it was like there was no internet and a lot of stuff to sort out, right? So finally we got it sorted out, and now the internet works very good. And it's very fast. And this is what we're paying for. So it's what we finally got. And I got it sorted out. So that's been what our life has been like, getting back home, kind of rebooting the new year, rebooting our systems, rebooting even our vision of the future. Like, how are we going to do workshops, and quests and things online. And I think we have much more certainty about that, and that the people we work with, we know want to work with us. and it might be a small group, but it's a certain group. And I think that's what's different about this year, is like we only want to work with the people that are certain that they want to work with us. And God bless all those people that are kind of lukewarm and they go their own way, and that's going to be the new year. It's not about numbers, it's about commitment and consistency. So I think we're getting that ourselves, to be more consistent, to be more with it, to be more present, and we're feeling better. So after 2 months on the road, we were kind of depleted, but now we're replenishing ourselves, trying to feel better. And we're not even leaving town until late March when we go on the India quest. And so that's good. We got a couple months home, and I'm glad about that. So that's kind of the practical status quo in our life. And I'm more happy because I like to do a lot of things online, the mantra breathing, these gifts of God. And when we're home, it's easier for me to do that. It's easier for me to work on the internet, do the podcasts, do everything. So being home is very conducive to our online work. And I think that's becoming a major part of our work, is the online work. And it's much easier to do when we're home, and it's just kind of effortless. We fall into a routine, and it's easy to keep that routine. It's easy to do the podcasts. And I think we're going to add some things to that as well. We had created this podcast on relationships because that's another one of our areas of focus. Sandra's written a lot of books on relationships, and we started doing this podcast on them, but it kind of fell by the wayside when we focused on the Course in Miracles. But we have a whole separate podcast on relationships, and we may start that up again. So we'll keep you informed about that. But it's interesting. Like the last one we did was why it's important to have a good wardrobe. You would like that, Rasa. Yeah, so and I listened to it, and it was pretty good. It was like, well, that makes your relationship much more joyful when you can, feel good, smell good, look good. And it was a good podcast. So we may take that back up again. Well, what's the news from Lake Wobegon over here? It was a good week, productive week. But I think what I wanted to talk about today was this Netflix movie we watched. It was in 4 parts. Maybe you've all seen it. It's been out recently, and the name of it was "All the Light We Cannot See." All the Light We Cannot See, and it was a beautiful story. It was set in World War II in France, and it was primarily about this little family. It was a father and a daughter, and then it was this German boy. The father and the daughter were French, and the boy was German. And then there was this radio transmission, and the guy that was doing the radio transmission. Okay. So the father was a director in a natural history museum in Paris. And the daughter at the time, it traces her different ages, but she was blind. All right. And he was a single dad raising this blind girl. And their relationship was so sweet, so tender. He was so good with her. And because he was, a very sensitive man, he built this little wooden model out of pieces of scrap wood of his area in Paris, a scale model in wood of where they lived, so that she could, because she was blind, she could run her hand around those buildings, right, in their neighborhood, and learn the neighborhood, so that she could go out blind and find her way around. So there was this model that he built, and this wonderful relationship he had with her. Well, one of the things that she and this boy in Germany, and get it, they're only like 4 years old or 5 years old or 6 years old. They were also into radios. So they tuned into this radio station where this guy called the Professor had this show for children. And all he talked about was light and darkness. And he would say things like, a piece of coal can be there for 1,000,000 years in the ground, and then you take it out of the ground and you light the piece of coal, and there's this light. And he says, well, that light is actually sunlight stored up. And he said, the light can last for 1,000,000 years. It never goes dark, right? It's always there in the piece of coal, this light. And then when you turn on the light, the darkness is gone. He would talk about things like that, about the light. So hence, the story is called All the Light You Cannot See. So it's all about this inner light. And he said, oh, well, the human brain is such an amazing, functioning tool. It can create colors and light and all kinds of beautiful things, gardens, buildings, paintings. But the brain itself is in total dark. It's like this, liter, couple of pounds of material in this sort of a fluid, and it never sees the light of day, but it creates light, so that was the kind of the nature of his talk to these kids. Well, fast forward, and then this was before World War II, and then of course the war comes, right? So now these kids are older, and it shows like the father and the daughter during the Nazi invasion of Paris, and what they have to do to save themselves. So they try to get on the train, but that doesn't work. And then they just have to leave Paris because they're also Jewish, right? And they know all this stuff, this rumors of everything happening. So there are a few scenes where they're walking down the road, leaving Paris, and they're sleeping in barns and things like that. Well, finally, they arrive at this town by the sea. And in the town by the sea, he has an uncle and an aunt. The father has an older uncle and an aunt, and they stay with them. Well, it turns out the uncle who never leaves the house went through World War I and got shell shock, in the trenches, and kind of it threw his mind off. And so when he got home, he was so frightened of going out, he just stayed in the house for like 20 years, never went out. And it turns out in the end that he is the professor that's giving these broadcasts over the radio to kids, right? He had such a traumatic experience in the war. He said, there must be something better than this. And he starts this little radio program, same time every day on this broadband frequency. And a lot of kids all over Europe are listening to this. And mainly these two characters, the blind girl and this German boy, who's also an orphan, by the way. And the German boy is very much into radios, and he's like a genius when it comes to radios. So he's like 6 years old, and he builds his own radio that he can even listen to this professor giving these talks, right? Well, now getting closer to the war, and the father and the daughter had to leave Paris, and the boy was kind of enlisted in the army and used in the radio, sector of the army. So now they come together. Like the boy is sent to this French town by the sea where this father and daughter go, and then the daughter discovers very quickly that this uncle is the professor, because she's blind. She's developed her hearing to such a degree that she can hear things, see things through her ears, right? So when she hears this uncle speak, she knows immediately, oh, that's the professor. And he's up on the third floor. He never went out of the house, right, for 20 years. Well, what did he do? He's making this radio broadcast for kids for many of those years. And she recognizes him, even though he's trying to keep all that a secret. Well, it turns out that during the war, the radio, show for kids turns into something with coded messages for the Allies to, know troop movements and all kinds of things. So the Nazis are always looking for those broadcasts of people that are broadcasting things to try to shut them down. And this is what the boy is given the assignment to find any broadcasts that the French resistance is putting out there to know their troop movements and et cetera, et cetera. Well, then there's another little sideline of the story, and that is because the father was one of the directors of this natural history museum. One of the things that he took care of were jewels in the museum, like diamonds, rubies, emeralds, these very precious stones that were in the Natural History Museum. And there was a particular stone that was this huge diamond called the Sea of Flames. And he said it's worth more than all the stones put together. It's like this huge diamond, but it has a curse on it. And the curse is whoever touches it, their family will encounter difficulties. But whoever possesses it can live forever. That's the legend of this stone, right? So anyhow, when they leave Paris, when the Nazis come, he puts all the stones in a folder, kind of a jacket, and he puts that in another crate with a dinosaur head to ship it out so that they'll be safe. But he puts this Sea of Flames in his pocket, right? So when they finally arrive at the sea and they find the uncle and the aunt and they're staying with them, and now he's building a whole new scale model of this little town, French town by the sea, so that his daughter can learn how to navigate. He puts this diamond in one of the little model houses, right? But then at some point, the Nazis find out that they're there somehow. They don't know exactly where they are. So he has to leave. He has to leave. He leaves the diamond in the scale model, but he himself has to leave because the Nazis are looking for him. And so the daughter stays with the aunt and uncle. And then the resistance gets much more intense. And it ends up where the daughter has to do the broadcast. And she's reading these broadcasting code. She's actually reading a Jules Verne, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, but it's all full of code. And she's actually directing the Allies to do their bombing missions, et cetera, et cetera. But meanwhile, the Germans are really looking for this radio. And there's another German officer who's looking for this diamond, right? Because that he's wanting to find this diamond because that's his job. He's given that assignment to find all the jewels in Europe and bring them into the Third Reich's bank. And so he's looking for this diamond, which means he's looking for this girl. And so the father had to go back to Paris, but this guy looking for the diamond intercepts him, and he doesn't get too much information, but he does get information that it's this town where the girl is, and probably that's where the diamond is. So long story short, the Allies finally come in and liberate this town, and the guy looking for the diamond finds the girl, but in the very end, the girl prevails, and there's like an explosion, and the Nazi is killed. The girl is safe. The boy finds the girl. See, he's supposed to find the transmission and shut it down, but he actually knows the girl and the professor were what saved him when he was a boy, giving this broadcast, right? So he's tuned into this broadcast that when he was a boy was talking about the light, and then now it's the girl. So he knows, oh, I've got to save this girl I can't turn her in, right? Because this is like the light. This was the only thing that made sense in the universe when I was growing up in Nazi Germany. And so he's kind of protecting this girl, and in the end he actually does, and they meet. And then pretty much that's the end of the movie, because the Allies just came in to liberate the town, and he has to turn himself in as a prisoner of war, So that's the whole story. But the beauty of it, I don't know, there was something about it. I watched it twice. I watched it with Sandra, and then I watched it again myself to kind of pick up any nuance. And I was so impressed by the acting, and especially the girl, the blind girl, and even this boy who was a German actor. They were very young. They didn't have all that much experience, I think. And the blind girl was actually, she did have some kind of eye condition, so she wasn't really acting. She was just being herself, right? And just the beauty of it all. a couple of the other actors I was familiar with. The guy that played the professor and the uncle was on some TV show in America playing a doctor for Hugh Laurie was his name, who played that part. But the acting was so well done. And this father with his blind daughter, there was such joy and tenderness in that relationship, and so much truth. The girl just always told the truth, you know. And when she found the uncle that had not been outside for 20 years, she said to him, "Well, look, this is ridiculous. You're still behaving as though that were here, just like the Course in Miracles, right? The past is gone, it can touch me not." She was like telling this uncle who's, you know, their senior, the truth and saying, "Look, you got to get off of this and you got to get out there. And if you want to, I'll take you out there and we'll face this fear down together." And he was like shocked that anybody ever said something like that to him. And then he was shocked and he said to her, "Well, I'm not ready, but please keep asking me. Please keep asking me to go with you out." Well, at one point he said, you know, when things were real critical with this, you know, invasion and the town being taken over by the Nazis, he said, I want you to ask me to go out and I'll go with you." So she gets him to go outside, and then he becomes more deeply into this French resistance that's going on in his town and helping the Allies, you know, with their things. And he's kind of liberated. He's kind of liberated from his past by this blind girl, right? And then in the end, there's a bomb that actually goes off and he dies in the end too. But this light, you know, this light that we cannot see, and that just that line, the light all the light we cannot see. And you know, I thought about that line in the Course because there's somewhere in the Course, I could find where it is, but it says the body's eyes do not perceive the light. Okay. And I think there is even a lesson, I think it's 270. I will not use the body's eyes today. And it's talking about Christ's vision. And it's talking about, with Christ's vision, it doesn't rely on the body's eyes. It doesn't rely on perception as we know it, because perception can be so judgmental and so off, right? So Christ's vision transcends the body's eyes. Christ's vision is the light, and it doesn't rely on the body's eyes. And that's what this whole movie was about, because this girl couldn't even see. She was totally blind. She was not at all using the body's eyes. However, she had such an in-depth connection to the light within, the truth within. Nothing she said was false. It was like she was a liberated soul when she came in, because she had this vision, and it didn't rely on the body's eyes. Yeah. So I was really moved by that story. And maybe if you haven't seen it, you ought to watch it. But yeah. So that was part of my week. So light. What is this light that we do not see? Why don't we see it? It's not that we're not guided in the right direction. Even in our identity, what we were saying in the mantra breathe, or what I was saying yesterday, was happiness, happiness, which is a very important factor in our life, to the degree that even the Declaration of American Independence would have that in there. It would say, inalienable God-given rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So what is this happiness that we're all pursuing, and perhaps we're not even finding? And maybe we're not looking in the right place. And we think that the happiness is determined by external situations. If we achieve a certain condition in our life, and those conditions are what we defined as our own version of perfection, then we will achieve happiness. Well, what if the happiness that we want to achieve never arrives? And even that form of happiness is not true happiness. And what if true happiness has nothing to achieve? It's already in us. It's already there. It was placed there by our Creator. In fact, it is who we are. And I think some of you were there for the lecture yesterday, but some of you weren't. And I was very moved by these lessons. Of course, self-identity is anytime there's a lesson that says I am, right? So anytime it says I am is a statement of self-identity. So it says I am as God created me. Then it says love created me like itself. Love, which created me, is who I am, or what I am. So then it's pretty clear. It's saying you are love. Your identity is love. Then it defines God as love. God being love is also happiness. So if we're created by our Creator in the likeness of our Creator, it makes sense to us. If we say, well, God is love, and we were created by God, therefore we are love. And then it gives us the lessons. Love created me like itself. Love, which created me, as what I am. So it's not too much of a leap in our logic to get that, well, I am love. Then it says, well, God being love is also happiness, and God's will for me is perfect happiness, and a happy outcome to all things is sure. So it talks a lot about happiness, but it doesn't talk about it in terms of you have to pursue it and then achieve something and then get it, right? It's not about getting the happiness. It's about being the happiness. Just how we could see, well, God created me as I am, God being love, I am love, love which created me is what I am. We can get our heads around that. Okay, my identity at the highest level is love. But then we also have to get my identity at the highest level is happiness. God being love is also happiness. Therefore, I am happiness. And whenever you say I am, it's already there. There's no achievement in it. There's no thing you have to do. There's no condition you have to meet. It's an awakening to something that's already there. And this is more major than we think, because if we saw that we are happiness, that is the nature of ourself. And we're here, gathered here to be ourself, right? To awaken to ourself. That's why we're here. That's why we're studying the Course in Miracles. That's why we do anything spiritual that we do. We want to be more aware of who we are. It's a action of self-identity, waking up to who we are. So that's what this work is. So now let's talk about light, because what is the light that we cannot see? All the light we cannot see, which was what this whole little movie was about, was the light in this girl that she didn't even use the body's eyes to see. She could just see the love. She could identify with the love. She invoked the love. Everyone around her was love. And it was just like emanating from her. And this is what the Course tells us we are. I am the light of the world. Lesson 61. It's another statement of self-identity. So don't look for the light out there. Look for the light in here. Because that's who you are. And that's not determined by thoughts you made up. That's determined by thoughts God created. Those are not ego made up thoughts. I am the light of the world would have to be God's thought. God's thought that created us to be the light of the world. And so everything not that light, he also gave us a tool called forgiveness that we can let it go. We can be discriminating and see, oh, well, this isn't happiness. This isn't joy. This isn't, feeling good. This isn't feeling innocent. Therefore, it's not the light. Therefore, it's not who I am as God created me. Therefore, I can let it go. And that whole discriminating process is the forgiveness process. And we have that too. And that's, I think, one of these recent sections in the text was saying that's the function of the Holy Spirit, to mediate between the ego's thought system and the divine thought system, the thoughts of God, because you still have a little bit of stuff to clean up, but the Holy Spirit can go in there and discern or discriminate which you want to hang on to and which you need to let go of, right? So it's when it said, be vigilant only for God and his kingdom, it was saying, well, yeah, but that's still implying that there's a decision to make and there could be something not God's kingdom that you have to be discerning to let go of. So if you're vigilant, well, what are you vigilant for? You're vigilant to keep out all those attack thoughts, all those guilt thoughts, all those dark thoughts, all those thoughts that are not the light, right? All those thoughts that are not the light. So the forgiveness gets shined upon that. And then the other thing this professor was saying, he says, light is forever. Million years, light's there. Darkness is just for an instant. Like you turn the light on, right? Where's the darkness go? It's gone. It can't prevail in the presence of the light. So that's the same with our mind. The ego can't prevail in the presence of who we are as God created us. Who we are as God created us is our self-identity. And that self-identity, it makes it very clear, is love. And then it makes it all so doubly clear. Love is pure joy. And love is filled with light. And the function of the light is to shine away the dark, which would be forgiveness. I am the light of the world. Forgiveness is my function as the light of the world. The light of the world brings peace to every mind through my forgiveness. Let me not forget my function. My only function is the one God gave me. And then the next lesson's quite beautiful. My happiness and my function are one. So light, love, happiness all go together. And that's who you are. And that's your self-identity. So when you get to know who you are, the result has to be happiness. It's like the one thing of the light that once you blunder upon it, right? And you wake up a little bit, and then you wake up a little more, and then you wake up a lot more, and you say, wow, that's who I am. And then it becomes very clear. And the words of the Course in Miracles are like, they're like the real jewels. Like this diamond that the guy was keeping and the German was desperately trying to find. You know what the girl did with it in the end? Because she's the only one, the boy and the girl are the only one that make it out, right? He has to go turn himself in because the Americans come, and he's now a prisoner of war. And she's the only one left in her family. Father dead, uncle, ATN dead, aunt dead, and she's the only one. Oh, and this German dead. Well, when the German finally meets his end, he crashes onto this table that has the scale model, right? And the whole thing crashes to the floor, and the little house that was holding the diamond cracks open, and there's the diamond sitting on the floor by the dead German who was trying to find it, right? So she knows the diamond's there. So the last scene, because the boy, the young man, also sees that the diamond's there. He says, what's this? She says, don't touch it and leave it there. And then she comes back, and she has a little cloth. She throws the cloth over the diamond. She feels around, and she takes the diamond in the cloth so she doesn't touch it. Right, well, what's the last scene? The last scene, and I'm not spoiling this for you because even if you watch it and you know what happens, it's so beautiful to watch this. She goes to the shoreline, the beach, because this town is right on the beach. It's a very famous French town, old walled city on the ocean. And she's on the beach, and she has the diamond rolled up in this cloth, and she has this white cane that blind people, carry around, red and white cane. She sticks it in the sand, and she walks out into the water, that waves coming in, and she takes this diamond with the cloth, and she just throws it with all her might, and it just goes into the ocean. She just totally throws away this diamond that everybody was so concerned about, looking for, willing to kill for, right? And she just throws it in the ocean. And you get a little vision of this diamond before she throws it in, and it's this beautiful blue diamond with like a orange flame in the middle of it, and hence it's called I think Sea of Flames. And she just takes this diamond and just throws it with all of her might, and that's the last scene. So it's like she knows this diamond has no meaning, and that the light is the love inside of her. And she and this German boy, they know that, the war is coming to an end, and he has to go and be a prisoner of war. And she says, well, I'll keep broadcasting on 1310, which is this frequency where her uncle broadcast, and now she's broadcasting. And after the war, you keep tuning in. And he says, well, if you keep doing the show on 1310, and you ask me to come back, I will come back for you. So that's kind of how it ends. And you know they're going to get together later, because they just have so much light. Both of them have so much light in them, even in the midst of all their struggles and all. I mean, this German boy had to go to this Nazi school and endure all this, terrible abuse, and even in the midst of that, he never lost his connection to the light. And so that was the last scene. She throws the diamond in the ocean, and it's all finished, and you know that he's going to come back later, and they'll get together later. So that was a beautiful story. And the happiness, even in the midst of war, they maintained this inner truth, this inner happiness, that wasn't affected by the external. And I think that's the main thing we want to get across in this course on happiness and longevity. We want people to get in touch with this happiness that's not dependent on the external. And then once you have touch with that, what do you do with it? Like, it's saying the law of the kingdom. Today we read in this section in the text, the law of the kingdom is to always extend what it is. In fact, the extension shows what it is. Like, okay, I remember Tarsing talking about Mother Teresa and how much light she had, and he said that light is extended forever. Like, that light that comes out of her is always going to be on the planet. It will never go out. And that's the kind of light that is the true light. And it's also the kind of light that extends. Hi, honey. Sandra's rebirthing herself, saying her own little utterances over there. And okay, well, just listen. Okay, thank you. All right. Well, so yeah, that light will always extend. And we have something that will always extend. Our self-identity, which is love, which is happiness, which is light, will always extend. When we're really in touch with it, naturally, it extends itself. You can't help it. Tarji said, it would be like putting a blanket over the sun. You can't. You can't blot out the sun. Just like you can't blot out the light of someone like Mother Teresa or Jesus or Buddha or Babaji or Amaji or any number of great beings. You can't blot out their light, because it is what it is, and it extends. And it extends joy. It extends happiness. It's a nature. The nature of it is happiness. This lesson, my happiness and my function are one. It's 66. My happiness and my function are one. There's a wonderful logic. In philosophy, they're called syllogisms. It's like a set of three statements. It's like a premise, and then another premise, and then a conclusion. And in philosophy, they call that a syllogism, which it means if premise number one is true and premise number two is true, then the conclusion number three has to be true. And that's a logic. That's like basic logic. And it's like when the Greeks came up with this, they established this order, right, of a syllogism. And there are a lot of those in the Course in Miracles. Well, the one in lesson 66, it says, God gives me only happiness. All right, well, you have to look at that and maybe you could question it. But as far as I'm concerned, the Course defines God as love and happiness. And it's just like an a priori condition. It says God doesn't judge and God does not condemn, and God does not forgive because he never condemns. And God is only love and God is only happiness. So then you have to decide, do you accept that? God gives me only happiness. I think I could get my head around that. I think I could get around that anything holy is also going to be joyous, right? So anything from God is going to be happiness, beauty, truth, simplicity. So that's very joyous. So God gives me only happiness. All right, so I think we could all get our heads around that. Then the next statement is, he also gives my function to me. Well, function, what's that? That's your purpose in life. It says, I'm the light of the world. Forgiveness is my function as the light of the world. Where does that come from? Well, it comes from your Creator. Of course, your Creator creates you, and then you have a purpose for being here. And that function comes from your Creator. It's just simple. So God gives me only happiness, and then he gives me my function, like a function in life, right? And then the third one says, therefore, my function must be happiness. It just makes perfect sense. If God only gives you happiness, and then he gives you a purpose in life, well, that purpose would have to be related to happiness, because that's all God ever gives you is happiness. So if you have a function and it's a divine function, it's going to have to be happiness. It's going to have to be joy. It's going to have to be extending the light. It's going to have to be. There's no other possibility in the truth of it. Now, if you want to think you're something else, and you don't want to really make the contact with your self-identity, your God-created self, then you can have all kinds of other functions, and mankind does, build a bomb, make an army, defend the city walls, and all that happens. I'm not saying it's good or bad, but it's not what happens in somebody who's divinely connected. They're never going to justify conflict and say that's part of God's will. They're never going to justify anything not happiness and say, oh, well, we just had to put up with it because we were doing God's will. No. God's will for me is perfect happiness. And that's God's only will. And this may be a light that not many people see, but we see it, and that's all that matters. And then when we see it, we naturally extend it. You can't help but extend it. It is who you are as God created you. The light, the love, the happiness, any action you do. Making the coffee in the morning and pouring your mate a cup of coffee. There's so much light in that. There's so much love in that. There's so much happiness in that. Every little thing you do is going to have that, and it probably does already. And why can't we just be appreciative that we see that? I think we're close. And I think we're really close. And it's okay that there's only 6 of us talking about this stuff. They asked Babaji, because he was talking about, followers and this and that. And somebody asked him, well, why is it that you don't have thousands of followers like Sai Baba and some of these other gurus in India, right? He said, well, it doesn't matter. I only need one like Jesus. So, because the legend is that, you know, Babaji being immortal, he's a Maha-avatar, and he comes in different ages and different forms, and that he was there at the time of Jesus, and then Jesus had those lost years between like age 13 and 30 where nobody knows where he went, what he did, and many people in India have evidence that he was there. And there's some evidence in Hirakan that Jesus came and Babaji shaved his head, and so that Babaji was one of his master teachers. So there's some evidence for that. Saunders seen it firsthand. So anyhow, Babaji said, I don't need 1,000 followers. I just need a good one like Jesus. And you know, that was the story of my teachers too. You know, I could probably count on one hand the students that really got Krishnamurti, and Tara Singh was one of them. And the students who actually got close to Dr. Shukman, I mean, not as a psychologist at Columbia, but as the scribe of the Course in Miracles. There weren't too many people who she allowed in that inner sanctum, and Tara Singh was one of them. So, you know, they didn't need 1,000 followers. They just needed one Tara Singh. And then he spread that light for 30 years. And that was his mission. Fortunately, I was one of his students, so it got passed through.
King Marcus is after, I think you maxed out because it's way after your time.
Okay, well, Sandra Ray's saying I'm 2 minutes over, but that's okay. We have a dentist friend coming at 2:30, but that's okay. So what I want to do now is end the recording. I'll do that.